Hey everybody, I'm trying something a little different this time. Normally I do my video recordings, and in fact I am with this as well with the live as I'm playing. The only downside to that, of course, is that when I do that, I have a tendency to, what's the word for it, not be able to necessarily focus my thoughts because I'm playing the game as I'm talking. So I'm doing something a little different here. I actually recorded... originally, I had recorded elements of me playing by myself, but I thought those might be really boring to watch, so instead I'm just going to run some of the footage that I recorded, me and Lando playing the Ghost Recon Breakpoint beta. And I'm going to be releasing those videos as their own things, but this one in particular, we were having some audio issues. It was cutting in and out, which we did a little bit on the other ones too, but it was worse here when I listened to it. So basically, I'm just going to run the footage silently in the background with the audio cut off, and I'm going to talk over it because I think this will allow me to talk a little bit more, like I said, with some more focus on my impressions of the beta. Because I've played probably about 3 hours on my own, and Lando and I combined have played about 3 hours, so I've seen it from both sides, and I wanted to kind of go over, because I don't know about Lando so much, but I in particular have really been looking forward to this game as a successor to Wildlands. I mean, anybody who watches the YouTube channel will see multiple hours of Lando and I playing Ghost Recon Wildlands. And it's because we both really like the gameplay. It's very pick up and put down. It doesn't require much out of you. It really is in many ways ideal because it allows us to play something that's fast. It doesn't... You know, we played The Division 2, and I did post some of those videos, but you'll notice that there are far less of those because, honestly, I got very sick of that because it was way too much of a lot of inventory management with that stupid gear score system, the fact that all the enemies were just bullet sponges, that the tactical elements became extremely dragged out. There were a lot of reasons why I burned out on Division 2 very quickly. Lando ended up liking it. He has played it far longer than I did. I had sold it back long before Lando stopped playing it. In fact, he might still be playing it. I shouldn't say stopped as if he is. As far as I know, he does still play it here and there. But the game soured very quickly for me, and instead, when I saw that they had announced Breakpoint and they had some gameplay video of it, it looked very much like Wildlands, and so I was looking forward to this. However, and I want to be careful to couch this properly. Then more stuff started coming out, and I started seeing elements of Division 2 leaking into this, and I wasn't sure if that was going to kill the game for me. So when I was able to play the beta, I was actually pretty happy because, to me, I mean, this beta is coming out a month before the game, so there are not going to be a lot of drastic changes, I would assume, to the gameplay itself. Unless it gets delayed, but I really don't think with a month out they're going to delay it now. Unless they run into some kind of separate bug that just kills the game. So playing this allowed me to go, okay, is this going to be what I want it to be, or is this just a watered-down Division? And the answer is kind of in the middle. It definitely has more elements of Division 2 than I would like, but so far... And, you know, I'll be posting the beta videos, so you'll hear me talking through this in Lando 2, our experiences. But thus far, that makes me sound so much older than I am. Thus far, ergo, Proctor Hoc, ergo hoc, it hasn't been enough that I'm still not looking forward to the game. But I will say that the stuff that they have added to this has not benefited the game. There are a number of people actually in the forums, if you go to the Ubisoft forums, which are completely visible to the public. You don't have to have any type of special access to see them. There are a lot of people that are unhappy with what they have done to this game. To a degree that is far more unhappy than I am. I'm not thrilled about some of the things, like the gear score system is here. And that's, you know, it just ends up being, and I think in one of my gameplay videos, I actually mentioned this. I don't know if it was in this one or not, because I can't remember which one. We didn't realize there was an audio issue till after I played it back. And I don't know which one, if it's going to be posted or not, but I actually say the problem with the gear score system is it's not so much that there is one. I understand why they do it. It makes sense to a degree as a way to gate off the way that they want gameplay to flow, which has always been an interesting element to me, is if you're going to make an open world game, and I've said this about many games, I don't think you should start gating things off. And it's not really open world anymore. If you're saying we don't want you to play these areas until this particular progression point, then I would argue you're not really invested in an open world game. An open world game should allow you to play it however you want. And either you have it where all the enemies progressively level up along with you, which I think is the ideal way to do it. I mean, you can have the story elements have requirements. That's okay. I get that part. But when you start just making areas impossible to get to because you're not at a certain number or level or whatever, I have a lot of problems with that when you're presenting your stuff as an open world game. I think that is a cheap way of saying we have an open world game, but not really, because it is an open world. It may not be linear as, you might be not going down direct corridors that do not allow you to deviate, but at the same time, it's not an open world. Don't say it is. If anything, you can say it's a hybrid environment where it's partially linear or, quasi-linear, whatever. I don't know. There's no term for it. But don't pretend it's an open world if I can't actually go everywhere I want. And I'm not talking about presenting a challenge. That would be also okay with me. If there are areas where you could actually survive, but the gear score system, it makes it where those enemies that are above your level just instantly kill you to most degrees. So that's probably not a problem a lot of people have. It irritates me. To me, what it should be is you should be able to go anywhere and do anything. And if you're going to gate things off, they should have other means to do it. Meaning the story can only progress if you go in these particular areas, but you can do them at any time, but not in any order. But the rest of it, outside of that, if you want to run around and do all the side missions immediately, which is something I like doing, a lot of people actually like doing before they do the main quest, there should be no block to that. So the gear score system, I didn't like it in Division 2. I still don't like it now. I think and the other side of it, besides that, besides the idea that that's not really what an open world is, in my view, is it becomes just repetitive, and this was the same thing in Division 2. They have basically copied the system. You just end up spending all this time going into your inventory, selecting something. Oh, I just picked a pair of boots up, even though I just swapped a pair. Oh, I got to swap them again because there's some incremental benefit, and it becomes overbearing and unnecessary and frankly tedious because you just are constantly cycling through equipment that is identical except for some stupid number. And that is just, I think that is probably the thing that in Breakpoint and Division 2, frankly, was the most irritating to me, which is now luckily, unlike with Division 2, which had other problems compounding that, Breakpoint for the most part does not have a lot of bullet sponge stuff. Or when it does, it's spread out. So you're seeing in the video, you're going to see us one-shotting people left and right. And that's what I liked in Wildlands, was the idea that you could set up, recon an area, and then either go in there guns blazing, but you would always have a shot at doing it, even if you get spotted as we do and people start shooting at you. You didn't have to sit there and go, okay, I have to worry about this giant guy who's going to come up to me and I'm going to shoot at him for 15 minutes straight just to get him down to half a bar of life. No, in this, if you hit them in the face, they're dead. Now, there are exceptions. I haven't seen them all because, we've been basically just kind of feeling this game out so far. But there's these drone tanks. But even those, I still would not say they're anything like how aggravating Division 2 was. Because the tanks are more powerful than we are. The ones that we ran into at one point were, at least at the time of this recording, were gear score 40, which was at least double what we were. And I was still able to blow one up using a grenade launcher. So the game made it tough. I mean, they hit you hard, but I used cover, moved around. We used some distraction techniques. The game still allowed for that enemy to be defeated. Something Division 2 and games like that where there is a gated level often don't let you do, or it just becomes so punishingly difficult that you give up. That has not happened so far in Breakpoint, which, is more like what Wildlands was. There were certainly enemies that were tougher to kill because they had armor on, they were elites, but the gear score thing feels like just an unnecessary addition to that. And it just feels like, okay, they're reusing a system from Division 2 that I didn't like to begin with. And that is probably the thing I dislike the most that has been carried over. Luckily, it is not so intrusive that it's bothering me to the point where I'm like, I don't think I want to play this game. I'm still leaning towards getting this game, and I think Lando is too. We'll see. I mean, we still have more gameplay to do in it, but I'm just going by my initial impressions, just wandering around, because, I'm looking at this as if somebody was coming to it with no experience with it, or is coming from Division 2, because Ubisoft's approach with this is very hybrid, even though they don't really say that. It doesn't feel like, it's not as arcadey, even though there is, I should say, an arcade difficulty setting, and I would be curious what that's like, because to me, that's a huge positive. I'm playing this in normal. Now, in arcade, this might be more like Wildlands as far as just run around, do whatever you want. So I can't necessarily rule that out. But at least in the normal difficulty, this is what I'm playing on. The other thing that feels like it is moved over from Division 2 is there is a sluggishness to everything that feels like an attempt to add realistic quote-unquote weight to the game, which isn't a big deal, but everything feels a little bit slower than it did in Wildlands. Wildlands was very fast-moving at times. You could really run around and bang out objectives here. Your character always felt very fast, very limber, very fluid. In this, there is a level of sludge to the actions, the movements, the driving, kind of everything that is noticeable. It's not a big deal. I got over it very quickly, but it's definitely there. Lando picked it up as well, so it isn't just me. There is a level of slowness to things that I think, because Division 2 did this a lot, is an attempt, and now there's a stamina bar where there was not in Wildlands, or at least it wasn't like this. As far as I know, in Wildlands, you could run, I think, forever. Now there's a stamina bar. There's injuries that weren't present where now you start limping. These all feel like ways to try to make this thing more like Division 2 that, frankly, and this is the thing that's sort of mystifying to me about doing it this way. Wildlands, as far as I know, did very well. It got very good reception. A lot of people liked it and wanted this to be basically that in a new area. So why add these new systems in when I don't really feel like they were necessary or people were clamoring for them? And Division 2 is still live when this game is coming out. So why do you want a type of game and then a hybrid version of that game, as opposed to saying, well, we're going to present two different types of games to get two different types of audiences? Instead, you're not going to really, I think for most people, I don't know, there's a lot of upset people in the forums who are saying, I'm not buying this because this is not what I wanted it to be, which was Wildlands 2. I don't know how much that's actually going to bear out. I'm not going to say that. I still will probably pick it up because I think Lando and I will still have a lot of fun in this. But there definitely is a step backwards a bit, not a big deal, not to the point where I'm like, oh no, I'm not getting it. But there is a regression to it that feels like it is, I don't know whether it's intent or whether it was simply easiest to just copy the systems, just move some of the systems over and, say, okay, we can pump this game out quick. I don't know. I'm not in the development studio. I can't speak to that. If it was by intent, I think it was a misread of what the audience wanted. And like I said, I've looked in the forums to see if I'm just nuts. And it does not appear that way. This does seem to be something that the community as a whole is not exactly thrilled with. So it's disappointing because I wanted this to be Wildlands 2, and it feels like it's Wildlands 1.5 and then 0.5 of a game that I didn't really like that much to begin with. So, again, not enough that I don't think I'm going to get it, unless it really drags or something changes as we play on here. But in the hours that we've played, there's enough of Wildlands in here that I'm still interested in it. The story, I don't care. I didn't care in Wildlands. I don't care now. The story is completely immaterial. It is more about, can I run around and have a good time with somebody else just shooting things up? And so far, that is delivered enough that I'm still invested in the game. Now, let's pivot off. I've spent 15 minutes or so here talking about the things I don't like. or things that are not great. Let's talk about the things that are great. The things that are is that everything from that a lot of the elements, I should say everything, because I just said that it wasn't everything. A lot of the stuff that I liked from Wildlands is present here. You're seeing it. I'm running around basically playing the same type of character that I played in Wildlands, where I'm playing a sniper. I'm able to complement my style with Lando's. They do have now specializations that were not present in Wildlands that, again, are very similar to Division 2. But I don't really mind those. I don't think the specializations are a problem. I didn't really have a problem with them in Division 2. I didn't like how they were implemented in Division 2. In this game, they are less detrimental as opposed to Division 2, where it felt like the specializations really had tangible impact and would stop you from playing certain ways. I so far have not at all really felt the impact of my specialization choice. In fact, there's a bonus in this thing. So if you look, there's a meter over on the left there, on the bottom left of the screen. That meter gets filled up as you do actions that correspond with your specialization, in my case, sniping. So when you're doing long-range shots and headshots, that fills that meter up, and then you can hit, I think that's what that L1R1 thing is. That activates your special talent. In the 6 hours we've played, I have not once activated that talent because I don't need it. And that, to me, is great. Some people will say, well, then what's the point? And I agree, what's the point? Because I don't think it was necessary. However, I don't care that it is there because it has not impacted my ability to play. And that's fine with me. That's a system that maybe, because they're doing stuff with raids and endgame stuff in this, like they're making it more like Division 2. Again, now that may come into play later where that specialization becomes a requirement. I don't know if that's going to bother me. If it only becomes a problem once you're at a point where you want more of a challenge, then that might work okay. Or maybe you'll never need it, meaning I may never activate this talent because I don't care. But if I get to a point where it gives me the edge in a fight, depending on how that presents itself, depending on when it happens, if it sort of naturally evolves, I don't know that I'm going to care that much. Whereas in Division 2, once you got to that Tier 1 or World Tier, whatever that was called, you really needed at times those specialization bonuses to even do anything. And I don't feel any of that so far here. And we've wandered into like I said, we fought things that were double our gear score, or essentially double our level is really what that means. And at no point did I feel like I had to go back and hit that talent thing to try to win. I was able to figure out how to beat the enemy without having to manipulate a system. And I think that's okay. So that's the specialization thing, the talent tree, certain things. There's a much deeper skill tree in this than there was in Wildlands. But I don't mind it. I think they've taken many of the same things and just broken them out differently. Certain things are behind a skill wall now that weren't before. Again, nothing that I think is necessarily bad. All the basic gameplay approaches that worked in Wildlands, as far as I am aware so far, again, this isn't the full game. This is a beta, so we'll see. There have been few things where I couldn't figure out how to play the way I was used to playing, and I was able to adapt to this game very quickly, which Division 2 frustrated me very early and very often. I figured out right away that I had made a mistake in getting that game. I was looking for something else. And this is close enough that the arcadey gameplay is still there. You still have the ability, as you've seen us doing, we're going into an area and we're one-shotting people. We're shooting them in the face, they fall down. Shoot them a couple times, they fall down. Not this spongy crap that Division did where you just had to sit there and lay on firepower for 30 minutes and maybe the guy would fall down or some guy would come up behind you with a sledgehammer and crack your skull in. That's fine if you want that. There are people who enjoy that gameplay. Good for you. Go crazy. Division 2 is out there. This is close enough to Wildlands where, unless again we stumble on something as we're playing along here, it's got enough of what I liked about Wildlands in a new enough setting with some differences. And this is where, gameplay should evolve to a degree. There are some evolutions of the formula I'm not so fond of. Again, that's the gear score, really. But other ones, I think, like this gathering plants and crafting medication, and even the injury thing, it does bother me a bit that you start really getting hampered by injuries. It just doesn't seem necessary for a game like this. This doesn't feel like a game that needs this level of realism where when you get shot in the leg, you have to limp until you can heal yourself. because at one point my game glitched out and I couldn't select the bandages, which meant all I was doing was limping everywhere, and it drained all the fun out of the game. This is a very frequent thing that happens lately, where games introduce these quote-unquote survival systems or realistic systems to try to enhance the realism of the gameplay, and I don't think they're ever necessary. But in Breakpoint, at least, it's not so oppressive when the game is functioning that it gets in the way. It's just one little thing you have to remember. But the gun systems are all pretty much the same. The exploration parts are the same, where you're going along and you can go talk to somebody, you discover something. It does invite you to explore the world. The vehicles handle mostly the same. Some people complained about the driving. I don't find it to be radically different than Wildlands was. It seems the same. The way that a lot of these systems work is more or less the same. And that is, again, that's a benefit. There is enough here that feels like Wildlands that it's not like Division 2 where I was just, oh boy, did I make a mistake with that? Thinking that was going to be like a Wildlands successor. And to some degree, again, that's fine if you want that. But this is close enough. Wildlands 1.5 and then 0.5 of Division. The 0.5 of Division, fortunately, has not been intrusive enough that it has bothered me. But it's right on the line, but that's okay. It's still not there. The fact that we were able to just go into a base, run into it, take it out quickly, jump around, open stuff up, go in and out. That's the stuff I remember from Wildlands. That's what I enjoyed about Wildlands, and that appears to be mostly intact here. So that the more fast-moving nature of this as opposed to Division, which it's funny how different these games are for games that are, in their bare bones, very similar, but Division 2 just went way too far into the, I guess it would be RPG element of it. And again, for people who really want to play around with stats and have certain, the scoring system and all that stuff, I guess that's fine. That's okay. But I'm glad that this is still closer. It's trying to have both sides of the fence, but it is definitely leaning still enough into the Wildlands model that I'm not bothered by the things that have been changed. I don't love them, but fortunately they don't break the game. So the core elements of Wildlands are essentially here. Now, as far as, like I was talking about earlier, the sludginess of the movements, some of the other things, I would suspect some of this stuff will get balanced out. Again, this is a beta, and it is basically a live game. So I would assume that these things will become optimized over time. They may speed up the movements. If they're smart and they actually listen to and respond to player feedback, then I think some of the things that are bothersome might get shaved down to a point where I don't care anymore. I don't think the gear score is going anywhere. That's permanent. But outside of that, everything else that is bothersome, like for example, one thing that I was very glad about was the breathing mechanism for sniping by default is horrific. They basically want you to half press, at least on a PlayStation controller, the shoulder trigger button, which is very unnatural. It never worked. I tried it a bunch of times. It was always hit or miss. I was able to remap that function, and once I did that, it was very simple. So at least they're like, okay, if you want to play a different way, you have the ability. And I'm hoping that type of responsiveness and that willingness to say players are going to play differently, I think that they might start altering things, balancing things out. I think there is the potential for this game to get smoothed out once it's out. I don't like that. Nobody likes this live services model except for the companies making it, because it does allow them to ship games that aren't done. And I totally agree with people who say this is a garbage way to do things. But I also accept that, I don't know how to accept, but what choice do you have? This is how they are. There really are almost no companies not making some version of this now. There are, but not many. So this is the benefit, the only benefit of that is it does allow them to tweak it after it goes live. And as long as they're responsive to that, I'm okay with it. So far, I am probably going to get this game, depending on how the rest of the beta goes, and unless there's any major gameplay changes or anything like that. So far, it has been fun enough. There is enough of what I liked about Wildlands present that it overcomes the introduction of things from Division 2 that I did not like. Whereas in Division 2, that was the whole game. Like, once you were into that, you were stuck with it. Wildlands, it's more like something that occasionally interrupts the flow of the game but never breaks it, and I can deal with that. That's okay, because there are still really fun moments that Lando and I have had in this beta, and that's really what's important. Is Division 2, we would play and I would just get irritated. You could hear it in the gameplay videos. I would reach a point where I'm like, yeah, I'm done with this. And that has not happened in Wildlands, except for, a couple of times where I've had what you would expect in a beta, little glitches here and there where I had to kind of reload or do something else. But outside of that, I have not encountered a point where I wanted to stop playing in the beta. And that to me is the most important judgment on whether the game is going to work for me, is in playing for now 6, however many hours it's been, I have not reached a point where I'm like, this is irritating me. I want to stop playing. And it has managed to be fun. It has managed to be fluid and fast at times for the most part. And I think that is kind of what I'm judging it on. So we'll see. I'm going to post, as I said, the beta videos as it goes along. So you'll be able to see the gameplay progress as we're going, because we're able to record the beta and we can post it. I haven't found anything that says you're not allowed to do that, because sometimes with betas they don't want you posting. I'm not streaming anything obviously, but even posting recorded video. But as far as I know, there is nothing like that here. So, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure from what I read, looking at other people who were asking on the forums, there's no restriction on it. So I want to at least get these impressions out there, because I think there's probably other people like me who are not sure what this game was going to be. And at least based on what the beta is showing us, it does appear to be a bit of a hybrid between Wildlands and Division 2, but the bulk of it, I do love that I blew myself up right there. I didn't die, but I did blow myself into a wall. The bulk of it is what you would expect out of Wildlands. It does hold enough of the stuff that I really enjoyed out of Wildlands that I am going to, again, unless something radically changes, in which case you'll probably see the video. If something that big happens that we're like, no, this is bad, I'm sure I'll post something about it. But based on the beta so far, and because the beta has to be, with only a month out, pretty close to the finished game, right now I'm leaning towards getting it, because there's been enough of what I remember liking about Wildlands in here that I think it overcomes some of the things that are less great that were introduced. They didn't put so much new bad stuff in that it overwhelms what worked before. So anyway, like I said, I'll have the beta videos will be going up, so you'll be able to see our experiences and hear our commentary. I mean, we're talking right through it, looking at this as a sort of pre-review. Outside of stuff that obviously a beta can't control. I'm not worried about graphics at this point. I'm not worried about glitches and bugs so much, because that's what you expect out of a beta. This is not the final release. I'm looking at the bigger, broader gameplay stuff as far as how does this game play? Because I don't expect it to change radically. Not with less than a month till release. Most of the stuff that's in here is the stuff that's in here. So we will see, unless there is some big announcement or change. But I wanted to at least get my impressions out there, let people who might be curious about what this thing is like and may not have had a chance to play the beta, my impressions on them. And the gameplay videos with the beta will follow. But I want to do this to just kind of give you my overall thoughts, which are mostly positive. I am leaning towards getting it. Again, barring some big thing that changes. So enough is there. Enough has been retained that this is still fun to me. And that's really all I require. I don't really care about new stuff or whatever. As long as it doesn't get in the way, I don't really care. So I am leaning towards getting this. And I just want to do a little video and let you guys know what was going on with it, what our impressions have been. I'll post the videos. You'll see them. And if you're playing the beta, or if you're interested in this after you watch this, I don't know. Do you want to get it? Does this look interesting? Let me know later.